Welcome to the second part of Driving High Performance Through Talent Development. And this is the second part of a presentation that I gave to HRNNI back in mid-November of 2016. So I was unable to bring my camera with me, totally forgot it. So I promised that I was going to record it here for those who couldn't attend or those who needed a recap. So here we go. So as part two, you don't need to have seen part one to get anything out of part two. But part one is available here on YouTube as well. So just a reminder, a little ditty about me. I'm Dr. Wade Larson, and I've been doing HR for over 20 years in different capacities. And really, I've been around the block with public and private sector, multiple industries, and I've been both traditional HR as my current role as Chief Human Resources Officer at Wagstaff, and I've spent plenty of years doing HR consulting as well for several organizations. So I had been in the area for about 10 years, then I left town to go to California for a couple of years, and now I'm back. So just to give you an idea of who I currently work for, Wagstaff, we've been around for 70 years, and really it's all focused on industrial manufacturing. We were just designated as one of the best places to work. It's a great family-owned operation, and it's a great company to work for already, and we're just trying to find ways to improve that and make it an even better company. So let's do a quick recap, though, from the first presentation. If you weren't able to be with us in the first presentation, you can either watch it. It's also out here on YouTube, or you can just go with number two and see if you have any interest in going to number one. So let's see what we talked about. We introduced talent management as not just another name of human resources. It's not just slapping a new coat of paint on the term HR and hoping for the best. Instead, it's really about doing it differently. It's doing many of the things that you're already doing, and really talent management ties these things together in a different way so that you're really focusing more on the talent itself and less on the headcount aspects that some traditional HR approaches takes. So to kind of recap, we talked about the four pillars of talent management, and these are some areas that we're already doing in the world of HR. It's, again, it's not reinventing anything or doing things dramatically different. It's about taking what we're doing and doing it better. So we take a look at recruiting, and that does entail how we find people, how we hire them, and pre-board them. How do we prep them? How do we onboard them and orient them? And what we find is that how we treat people coming in makes the biggest difference of how their experience is and what their performance looks like while they're with us. Next, we take a look at their development, and this is from day one. How are we training them? How are we keeping them on their skills and helping them to be successful in the organization? And what are we doing both in the short term and the long term? Then we talk about performance, and it's not just about the annual performance evaluation. We're also taking a step back and figuring out how do we plan for performance by understanding what our customers need and identifying the talent pieces that are necessary to meet those needs. And then how do we create the support mechanisms through compensation to support high performance? How do we create succession plans so we have enough bench strength at any time? And then how do we promote and support the growth of our individual employees so that they stay with us? And so what happens is that through the process of talent management, as we align these functions with with working with our employees, then we're able to better hit our company goals. So I introduced a total talent management model last time, and we talked last time about the demographics of your current workforce and your customer base, the strategy that you need to use, some alignment processes to get everybody on board, developmental considerations, and then performance. And so let's take a look at some of those pieces. So first, when we talk about building a talent management strategy, we've got to start with what the customers want. Now, we all have customers. Whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, whatever the industry is, we all have customers. And the key behind talent management is we've got to understand what the customers want and then identify what it is that we need from our employees and really match these things. And so as we're able to align employee performance with customer needs, then it really comes together as we're building a basis, not just on headcount, but on what specific talents are we going to need to meet the customer's expectations and needs on this current project or on ongoing relationships that we have with them. As we build the strategy, we also need to understand that not all employees are created equally. And I think we know that, but do we truly treat them differently, or do we just try and put everybody into the same category? So we have that army of steady employees. These are the ones that come to work, they show up, they do a pretty good job, they're pretty steady. But we also need to recognize that we have those high performers, the ones that are consistently meeting and exceeding goals. They're dependable, they're there when you need them, and when you start talking about things like projects and who's managing them, these are the folks whose names come to mind first. Then you also have that handful of employees who are superstars, and they truly are your superstars. These are the individuals who make or break your company. They're the ones who are making the deals. They're the ones saving a ton of money, and they're really the ones helping you stay on track. What happens, though, is that if we treat everybody the same, which is what a lot of the performance management processes do, a couple of things are going to happen. Your superstars and your high performers, they're going to feel like you're treating them just like you treat everybody else. And if that's the case, then they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to leave you, or they're going to start performing at the lowest common denominator. They're going to catch on that, why should I bust my backside when I can do less and make just as much and be just as rewarded as everybody else? So you got to take care of them. So, when we take a look at how this group breaks out, your steadies are probably in that 70 to 75% of the group, and your high performers are that 20%. Your superstars are really that 5 to 10%, and they're the handful of folks who will really hurt if they leave your company. So we got to find some different mechanisms to differentiate our rewards, differentiate our opportunities, and really stop treating everybody the same and start recognizing the high performers and the superstars for what they do for the company. Otherwise, they will leave, and you'll start to feel it on your bottom line. So what happens then is, as we're taking a look at this mix of employees, we need to also recognize that we've got to do something differently, because these once-a-year performance evaluations are not working. Last time we talked about several companies who are ditching the traditional annual performance evaluations, and what's the story behind them? Are they getting rid of it altogether? Well, here's what they know. They don't work. The annual performance evaluations just don't work at all. We've known that for years, but we keep on perpetuating the insanity. So what happens is that the managers hate doing them, the employees hate receiving them, and if you ask the manager, why do you do it? Well, it's because HR makes me do it. Now, that's definitely the wrong reason to do it. But that's behind why many of these large companies like Adobe, IBM, Deloitte are killing their traditional annual appraisals and trying to figure out something else. What the real shift is that they're moving from performance management, as we've traditionally done with appraisals and that linear model, set some goals, come back at the end, and hope for the best, to really a performance development model that's a year-round approach. These considerations are that they've really got to start asking, what do you want? If you're okay with what you're doing now, then just stick with the same stuff. This is word to the wise. If you don't have the capacity, or you don't have the capability internally to do this, or if you don't have the desire to start to treat people a little differently based on their performance, if what you've got is working, then that's fine. End of story. Pause this. Go back to the rest of your life. But if you really want more and you want better performance out of folks, you got to shift it up, because the traditional model is not working at all. But again, you've got to ask that question of whether or not you're ready to get there. And this means you've got to start holding people accountable, not the poo-pooing type of bit of, oh, well, we didn't quite meet that expectation, but we'll get at this next time. I had a conversation with a manager who was frustrated with his employee, and I said, well, how long ago did these issues start? Well, I've addressed them for the last 4 performance evaluations, and it still hasn't changed. So you've been dealing with the same thing for 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. But the concept was, hey, we're just going to deal with it and keep on doing it because that's how we do it. So what it also means is that we've also got to focus on actual performance and outcomes, not just the soft stuff. I mean, soft stuff is important, and there's some things that are measurable and valuable there, but you've got to get down to business. If the individual is not making at least contributing their own salary to the bottom line of the company, then why do you have them? I mean, if we do not start focusing on ROI, we're going to keep doing what we're doing and keep getting what we're getting, and nothing will change. But if you want to make a difference, you got to start holding people accountable for contributing at least enough to justify the bottom line. So what are some of these places replacing their annual evaluation with. Well, here's one solution that some are modeling their performance evaluations after. And in fact, at Wagstaff, this is one that we're looking at that we're going to be implementing in the next year. And I call it the 1+3 performance model. And so really what it involves is one goal setting meeting, kind of a set the direction meeting, followed by 3 quarterly evaluations to stay on track. So in the first performance alignment meeting, this is where you're going to meet, whether it's once a year you're doing everybody or it's on their anniversary date, however is best for you to organize, manage, and facilitate. The manager is going to sit with the employee and review the past goals and the results. It's not going to be a full-out performance evaluation, but they are going to assess what were the goals that were set and how did you do it. Now, ideally, the goals were specific and measurable, so it should be a pretty easy meeting to understand where you're at. But the most important part of this meeting is setting the new goals for the coming year, because this is where you're going to set the goals and will be used as the basis for all other meetings and conversations that you have throughout the year. So over the next 3 months, there are 3 quarters, you're going to have these quarterly conversations. Now, these are typically in a coaching format, so it's not a formal evaluation. It's instead having a seat with the employee and reviewing where they at. And you're only going to ask 3 or 4 questions, or at least those will be the starting points for the manager. Number 1, how are you doing on your goals? Are you meeting them? Not quite meeting them? What's getting them in the way? Number 2, what are the obstacles that you as the manager can help to remove and get out of their way? And then number 3, are there any challenges that are going on, right? Are there any challenges to performance that need to be addressed? And that's the time to take care of it if you haven't done so already. Ideally, managers, as they see challenges emerging, they'll take care of them when they see them. But if not, then at least we're tackling it now instead of waiting for a full year to address it. So, how you approach your performance management and your talent management is really kind of up to you on how you want to incorporate these things. So let's get into the new stuff and start talking about how to set the foundation, how to create this platform to support this model of focusing on talent and managing the performance around that. So let's start with the learning element first. So really what we're talking about here is we've got to move away from the concept of training and shift it over to learning. Now, what is training? A lot of times when you say what's training, you're thinking of a one-time sit-down classroom event. Maybe it's a multi-day session, and those have their place. It's fine. It's good stuff. But really, if you want to take a look at how to develop your talent, you've got to look at the whole learning package. The whole goal here is to assimilate new knowledge and skills and abilities and capabilities, new attitudes, and these other things that help to improve performance and business outcomes. And unfortunately, we can't do that in just a one-time sit-down session. It takes learning over the course of their entire career. And so what the challenge is how do we get them to learn without thinking that they're being taught, right? How do you get them trained without them knowing that it's training? Because anytime that we say, hey guys, we have HR training, most people cringe. So how can we get them to improve their performance, through acquiring new knowledge and skills and improving their attitudes? So here I have demonstrated the equation for performance, where performance is a function of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And so the bottom line is, if we want better performance, we have to do something to improve their knowledge and their skills and their attitudes. And that comes from learning. It really does. Yes, training's included as part of the learning concept, but it's not not the same thing. You see, where learning comes from, we have several areas. And again, this formalized training and development session, like a one-day workshop or a multi-day seminar, right? That's great. That's formal learning, and that's important. But we also have the informal learning, and this is where the employee is going out and finding stuff himself or herself. They're going to go out to Google and find some articles. They're going to go to YouTube and watch a video or 2 on how to do something. They're going to do it on their own. They're going to read a book. They're going to do something, but that's an informal learning process that's also part of the equation. Finally, we have on-the-job training, or the learning that takes place as they go. And how do they get this? By being assigned new projects, to wander into new territory as employees, and to really be exposed to some new things. That's where the real learning takes place. So while we're spending so much time and energy on developing and delivering the formal learning, which again we should continue to do, keep this in mind. On a percentage basis, only about 10% of the learning that employees use on the job is from this formal learning process. About 20% comes from this informal learning where they go out and just find stuff on their own, and a whopping 70% of the learning takes place as they do things. If you pause for a minute and think about your own career and your own learning path, you can recognize quickly that that's probably the case. There may have been a project or a different experience that you had where you learned far more than you ever did from your book learning or from a seminar that you attended. What this means is that we have to take a different approach to learning, not just delivering the training mechanisms, but also a full management of the learning process. So yeah, we still need to provide the formal learning, but we also need to create opportunities for employees to talk and share and discuss things to really start to utilize and have a bigger impact on the informal learning. On the job piece, we need to create a learning-rich environment where employees are given new opportunities to not only work on things and have their successes, but also new opportunities to have mistakes. As they make mistakes, that's where a lot of the real learning takes place. So when you consider the different types of learning that you may be looking at, standard leadership or management training, that makes sense. There's new employee orientation or onboarding. We need to take some time to plan what that looks like to help to orient and acclimate new employees. There's ongoing development that you can take a look at of helping employees develop their personal skills. There's also technical training that if you have any kind of technical folks on your staff, such as engineers or mechanical folks, you really need to make sure that you're providing the technical opportunities so that they can continue to learn and grow. And you have those compliance pieces too that you need to make part of your equation as you're planning out what you're going to be doing for the learning element. So let's take an example here. Let's take leadership training. And as in my role, in an HR role, I can start to say, okay, so how is it that I can manage appropriately these three types of learning: formal, informal, and on-the-job learning, and really take into account what percentage that they make up. Now I'm going to break it down here in this example where I'm going to break it into short-term learning opportunities, mid-term, and long-term. So from a formal learning perspective, I can still put on the monthly seminars and online learning courses. I can assign them online classes. I can bring in special seminars or send folks to conferences. There are a lot of things that I can do, and I should continue to do that. From an informal learning, maybe it's a matter of helping them learn how to learn. So one option that we're taking a look at is this concept of 9 minutes on Monday. Every Monday, we'll send out links to a video and a short read for managers on a specific topic. And so within 9 minutes, they should be introduced to a new topic, and they're able to explore more, with that through the week. And so as the challenge goes, we'll spend 9 minutes on Monday teaching them a new principle. And ideally, over the course of a year, I've got 52 opportunities to teach 52 concepts. We may take a look at assigning books and learning plans, but then on the job piece, we can start working with managers to identify, are there some special projects or certain committees that make sense for people to be a part of to help them develop. So that's learning, really building that foundation upon which the employees can not only continue to perform, but also improve their performance along the way. So let's take a look at the next component, which is rewards. And this is really, how do we build the reward structure to motivate and retain high performance? So when you consider your current compensation design, you probably have things such as base pay in there. Ideally, they all have base pay. There may be some bonus payments involved. There may be some non-cash issues or opportunities there too. The question really needs to be is, how can we maximize our ROI on our compensation investment? A lot of times we see compensation and payroll as just an expense. And if that's how you want to see it, then fantastic. What I see it is an annual reinvestment, and I better gosh dang be getting my return on that investment. So, if your current salary is running you $24 million a year, you better be getting at least $24 million out of work in return on the labor that's invested. Ideally more, right? That's why we invest money, is to make money. And if you're not getting back what you need to start asking yourself, what can or should I be doing differently with that compensation money to really get the ROI that I'm looking for? So when you're taking a look at rewards and what might help to motivate and generate high performance, here are 5 areas that you may take a look at. The first is the structural mechanics of the plan. These are things such as where you put your positions, leveling of positions. So if you have a engineer 1 or a 2 or a 3, how do you structure that and build that into place to make it not just a butts in seats kind of a award that, hey, congratulations, you've been here 3 years, now you get an advancement. But how can you make that an incentive where it's based upon performance and achievement of specific talents? You also need to take a look at your performance incentives and make sure that you keep in mind what the market is doing out there. Tie in their performance, but also be sure to have some elements and some tools in this process to really take care of your high performers. If your way of taking care of a high performer is to give them 1 extra percentage, they're going to say, well, if I'm mediocre, I'm 3%, but if I'm a super high performer, I get 4%. That's just not enough to differentiate high performance. You need to take a step back and consider, what is it worth to you to keep them on your payroll? You need to build in some of those high performance incentives. You also need to take a look at perhaps some intermittent incentives. So you may have some performance-based or more frequent types of awards. One example could be quarterly bonuses. So as part of our performance discussion with the 1+3 model, hey, the time that you get together for the goals, that's probably when you're going to be talking about base pay. But what about the other times? If you really want some incentives or some opportunities to drive performance, be sure to put some money behind what you're doing. If you're having these quarterly conversations, have some money that's available to give them as rewards, more immediate rewards for the work that they've been doing. You may also consider recognition and rewards. These might include on-the-spot awards or monetary or non-monetary awards, things such as gift cards or company logo swag. That may be just what they're looking for to help them feel part of the team or help them feel like you're truly recognizing what the contribution that they're making. But you may also take a look at some other incentives. Maybe there's a profit sharing opportunity. Maybe there's a commission base that you can incorporate that doesn't cost you anything more than what you're paying now, but provides that opportunity for folks to really dig in and start to perform. When you're taking a look at immediate and intermediate rewards, keep in mind that your purpose behind them matters. When you're taking a look at what you're handing out and what you're doing or the message that you're sending, your younger employees need a regular and consistent stream of good job. Comments, consistent encouragement to help them know that what they're doing is correct. Others who may be more in the middle, such as Gen Xers or some folks who have some different experience with you, they may be looking for some opportunity to be recognized and be told, hey, yes, your performance is where it needs to be. It's helping us meet our goals. And still others, especially with the generations that are in the boomer group or above, they need to recognize that you see what their contribution has been. And so these rewards and recognition elements can really help to acknowledge what that contribution is. And so while the money's good and the cash value of some of these trinkets are great, what it comes down to is different people need different ways to be recognized and rewarded. So keep that in mind and tie that into your consideration. Base pay is expensive. It's very expensive. Bonuses are very expensive. But at the same time, you can do a whole lot of good by providing some of these less formal opportunities. So with the learning and development component and your ability to continue to motivate them, let's take a look at succession planning. Now, succession planning is really about identifying and developing new talent to replace current talent when they either promote or they transition or they leave. And this plays into everybody's considerations, especially nowadays. For the last several years, we've had many people who have not been able to retire due to finances, due to the last recession, due to a number of factors. People are working longer, and so this giant wave of retirements that we had expected has been postponed. So now that the economy is getting a little bit better, folks are getting a little older. What we find is that we're facing a really large number of folks who will be exiting the workforce. And most organizations don't have a solid plan of how they're going to deal with that when the exodus does take place. Now, retirement is just one factor. There may be other situations where you're losing employees due to competition who's driving them away, due to several different opportunities. So when you're considering succession planning and how to do it, here are 4 considerations that you should really take a look at as you evaluate each of your positions. You'll want to take a look at the performance of each individual in their current role. How well are they doing at their job? And if it's somebody who's a good performer overall, but they're struggling in their job, you may want to consider whether or not that's a good fit for them. You may want to take a look at where they have the opportunity to demonstrate higher levels of competence, maybe in a job that's more aligned with who they are and what capabilities they have. You also want to take a look at their readiness to advance. If they're good to go and ready to go, we need to know that. And the reason for that is because we're going to ask the next question, not only are they prepared to move up, but do they have a replacement prepared for when they do move up? There have been plenty of folks who have been denied promotions, not because they weren't the most qualified individual, but because there was nobody there waiting or ready to take their place once they moved up. So that's important. We also want to consider flight risk. Are they currently looking for something, or do they have reason to be currently looking for something? And we need to know what the competition is doing for this type of position. By even if they're having a great time and they're great employees and they love the company and they love their job, if we're not aware of what the rest of the world is doing, we're going to fall behind and put ourselves at risk for losing them. And then the 4th consideration is, what's the impact if they do leave? Where are the pain points? How badly is it going to hurt if this individual is going to leave? Now, the more painful that it is when you ask this question, the more significant it is to consider your succession plan for that position. If you take a look at a couple of folks and you're like, well, yeah, they'll leave and they'll be inconvenient, but then that's probably not where you want to start on your prioritization. If you have a handful of folks who, if you say, what happens if they leave, and you start to cringe and get sick to your stomach, chances are good those are the better places to start out. Now, this may be what you could take a look at. There are many systems out there to help you with succession planning. If you don't have a giant whiteboard that you're doing it with, if you want to go manually, you could take a look at several software packages out there that, something like this. This is just one example where you're able to lay it out and quickly see, what do I have in terms of succession planning? The ones in red are the ones who are at risk in their assignment. Maybe they're not doing so well. And we can focus on some opportunities to help them to succeed. The ones in green, those are the ones with the high performance or high potential, and you want to take care of them. They may not be in their ultimate spot today, but you want to give them the time of day when it comes to developmental opportunities. And then the ones in yellow in this example are those who may be at risk of leaving. And you need to ask that question, how bad is it going to hurt, and why are they leaving? So that gets into some growth opportunities as well. When we consider growth, you may take a look at who are your high potentials, who are your flight risks, and who are at risk in their assignments. This may give us some opportunities to consider the strategy and decide what we want to do. Again, those who are in the high potentials, we want to take care of them, and you want to consciously take care of them. Does that mean that we're going to provide them with opportunities that we may not offer to everybody? That is exactly what I'm saying. If they need the development, if they need the encouragement and the opportunity, we need to give it to them. It's not to say that we neglect the rest. That's not what I'm saying. But if we do have those high potentials, we've got to take care of them. We also need to take a look at the flight risk and the reasons why people are leaving. And then also, who's in trouble in their jobs. Now, one model that has been used is called the 9-box model. And so if you take a look at the axes, the bottom one is performance assessment, how they're currently doing with their performance. And then potential assessment, what potential they have. You'll take a look at some areas here. So the ones in green tend to be those who are higher performers and they have high potential. Those are the ones who you need to take a look at. Those are your higher performers. Those are your rock stars. The ones in the yellow, right? Those are the ones where, keep on feeding them, keep on giving them what they need to. But really, when you're talking about resource allocation, yes, you want to allocate resources to them and take care of them. For a couple of reasons. Number one, you want to maintain that steady group so that they stay steady. But you also want to make sure that if anybody has the desire or wants the opportunity to move from being in that steady group up to a higher performer or a rock star, you need to provide those opportunities there. But this may be one opportunity or one way to clearly lay out who your folks are and where they lie. So with the other elements of the platform, another consideration is the leadership component. What are we going to do to change the culture and to change the way that we start to understand how we manage people? It needs to be less focused on participation and really move to performance. We need to move away from rewarding people for simply just having their butts in their seats to really focusing on the outcomes instead. That's not to say that we don't want to encourage the butts and seats approach. Yeah, we want the steadies to remain steady. We want to maintain as high a performance as possible. But we need to do so in a way that completely shifts the focus from just coming to work to come to work and shift it over to coming to work to make a difference. So what this means is that to get to this high performance outcome, managers need to have more employee touch. We need to shift it, and instead of working at the employees or working, to give directions to the employees, managers must understand how to work with the employees. Managers need to understand how to clearly define goals and how to make them measurable so that it's easy for them and the employee to understand. The managers need to understand that it's going to take time, right? And they need to create the time to focus on what real expectations are, not just something buttery so that you can give them the amount of compensation at the end that you think they deserve. Give them what you think they deserve, but spend the time to focus during your performance assessment, during your goal setting, during your quarterly coaching conversations. Spend that time to really figure out what you as a supervisor can do to make that difference. That's a different approach. The real emphasis needs to be on the feedback and the accountability to be consistent at this, ongoing all the time, and really built around the goals that were set. It's also a shift to a coaching and a teaching model, which means that managers need to learn how to teach and they need to learn how to coach. Now, for some, they've been doing it masterfully for years, and those are probably the departments that are performing the best in your company. But for everybody else, this is where we're going to need to spend more time with managers, teaching them how to really shift their focus and to how to become effective coaches. But we also need to make sure that the leaders are doing their part to guide outcomes through their examples. The leaders need to be walking the walk, not just talking it. And in short, your leaders have to step it up. So when you take a look at this laundry list of what does it take to facilitate the success, it's going to take a large paradigm shift of your managers to stop doing what they've always been doing for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years and shift to a model where the employee comes first, where we help them to align to their goals, where we help them to and guide them to increase their performance. We turn into performance coaches and less about being the boss. So anyway, that's a big order. That's a tall order. When we start taking a look at the demographics and saying, okay, what do our customers want, and building our staff around that or building our project base around that, it starts to make a difference. But as we start to align the opportunities and we start to put people where they make more sense, when we start to add more fluidity to job assignments, then we're going to be able to move away from just saying, here's your job description, this is what you do, stay within the lines, to a shift over to, hey, that's the talent that you have. We may need that talent base in different scenarios. And we need to create greater flexibility to move people around to projects and areas where it makes more sense. This means that we need to also spend more time on understanding what our employees need to help them to develop the performance patterns that make the greatest sense. underneath this performance base, we need to make sure that we have the learning opportunities to keep growing the talent that currently exists. We need to provide consistent and regular influxes of learning opportunities to employees. And then we also have to reward them in a way that not only guides and motivates, but is really proportionate to the amount of return that they give us on our investment in their pay. We also need to take succession planning, so you know what you have on your bench right now. You understand your current bench strength, but you also know what lies ahead. And then you continue to identify opportunities to grow that talent and develop it with the leadership eye to developing managers and into coaches and into teachers that will help get you there. So in the end, when we start talking about these things, it's a lot of these things we're already doing. And it's not about doing them dramatically different. It's about doing it with a way or in a way that truly aligns to the outcomes and the performance measures that you're looking for as an organization. So best of luck to you. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Love to help you out. Thanks.